Part 1. Far beyond the stars that humans could see with their eyes, in a place where time moved differently and silence was thick like stone, the Galactic Concord held its most important meeting in 100 cycles. The chamber was built from living crystal, grown over centuries, and it floated in the quiet dark near a dying star named Xylos. Inside, 17 species sat in a wide circle, each one shaped by evolution and history in ways no human could imagine. Some had skin like polished metal, others pulsed with soft inner light, and a few communicated not with sound but with shifts in color and scent. They had watched the galaxy for longer than Earth had known fire, and now they had made a decision about one young, noisy species that had only just learned to leave its homeworld. That species was humanity. For decades, the Concord had tracked human expansion. At first they were amused. Tiny ships crawling between nearby planets, clumsy attempts at faster-than-light travel, wars fought over patches of dirt and drops of water. But then things changed. Humans built stations around Mars, mined asteroids, sent probes past the edge of their solar system. They stopped fighting each other as much and started building together. They cured old diseases, shared knowledge freely, and began reaching out, not with weapons first, but with signals of peace. That worried the Conquered more than war ever could, because peace, in their experience, was fragile. And fragile things broke. When they broke, they often took others down with them. The Concord's data stream showed that humans were emotionally volatile. They cried at songs. They forgave enemies. They risked their lives for strangers. They also lied, cheated, and destroyed their own home out of greed. This contradiction made them unpredictable, and in a galaxy that valued stability above all, unpredictability was dangerous. After years of debate, the Council finally voted. The motion passed by a narrow margin. Humanity would be placed under controlled stewardship. Not destroyed, not punished, but gently guided. Their colonies beyond Earth would be frozen in place. Their technology would be reviewed and limited. Their access to galactic networks would be filtered. They would be allowed to grow, but only within lines drawn by older, wiser species. It was, the Conquered told themselves, an act of mercy. Light years away, on the third planet from a modest yellow star. No one knew any of this. On a quiet Tuesday morning, Lieutenant Daniel Brooks stood in the observation bay of the deep-range scout vessel, Aurora's Edge, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug. He was 32, with tired eyes and a calm voice that made nervous rookies feel safe. His crew was small, just 4 people including him, but they were among the best Earth had. They had just finished a 3-month survey near the edge of the Kuiper Belt, mapping ice fields and checking for signs of ancient alien debris. Nothing exciting. Just routine work in the endless dark. Louisa Carter, the ship's engineer, floated nearby, her fingers dancing over a holographic panel. She was sharp, quick to laugh, and could fix anything with wires or code. Ryan Ford, the xenolinguist, sat cross-legged on the deck, listening to a loop of whale songs from Earth's oceans. He said it helped him think in patterns. Priya Nair, the medic, was in the lab, running diagnostics on their bioscanners. She was quiet, observant, and always the first to notice when someone was hiding pain. Then the alert came. It wasn't loud or flashing, just a soft chime from the long-range array. Daniel set his mug down. "Louisa, what's that?" Louisa frowned. "Unknown signal. Origin point. Outside the solar system." Way outside, Ryan drifted over. "Is it repeating?" "Yeah," she said. "Every 7.3 seconds. Same frequency. Same pattern. It's not natural." They gathered around the main display. The signal pulsed like a heartbeat, steady, deliberate, intelligent. It didn't match any human transmission. It didn't match anything in the galactic database either, though Earth's database was still small compared to what the Concord possessed. "Could it be a probe?" Priya asked, appearing in the doorway. "Too clean," Louisa replied. "Probe's glitch." "This is perfect." Daniel felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. "Record everything. Send a burst transmission to Earth Command. Full encryption." Before Louisa could tap the command, the signal changed. It stopped repeating. Instead, it shifted, narrowed, locked onto the Aurora's edge like a hand reaching out. A new tone emerged, layered beneath the original pulse. It wasn't language, not yet, but it carried structure, intention. Ryan's eyes widened. "It's adapting." "It heard us. How?" Daniel asked. "The burst transmission," Ryan said. "It used our signal as a reference point. Now it's speaking our Well, not our language, but it's trying to match our communication layer. Louisa pulled up a spectral analysis. This isn't just a message, it's a handshake protocol. Like when two old computers try to figure out how to talk to each other. Priya crossed her arms. Or like someone knocking on the door. No one spoke for a long moment. Outside the viewport, the stars were silent. The solar system felt suddenly small. Then, without warning, space itself seemed to ripple near Jupiter's orbit. Not an explosion. Not a flash. Just a slow, smooth tear in the fabric of reality. Like fabric being parted by invisible fingers. From that tear, a ship emerged. It was sleek and black, shaped like a teardrop with no visible engines or windows. It didn't reflect light, it swallowed it. The Aurora's Edge's sensors went wild, unable to read its mass, composition, or energy signature. It just buzzed. Daniel's hand hovered over the weapons panel. Earth ships didn't carry much, just defensive lasers and a few EMP charges, but protocol said to be ready. Don't, Louisa said softly. If they wanted to hurt us, we'd already be gone. Ryan nodded. They came all this way. They sent a signal first. That means they want to talk. Daniel took a breath. He thought of his younger sister back on Earth studying to be a botanist. He thought of the farmers in Kenya who shared their last seeds during the drought. He thought of the way humans argued, yes, but also how they rebuilt again and again. He opened a channel. This is Lieutenant Daniel Brooks of the Earth vessel, Aurora's Edge. We receive your signal. We mean no harm. Silence. Then the alien ship pulsed once, a soft blue-white glow along its hull. The signal changed again. Now it carried a simple phrase repeated in dozens of harmonic layers, translated through Ryan's fast-working algorithms. We have come to deliver the will of the conquered. Daniel didn't know what the conquered was, but the tone wasn't hostile. It was official, like a judge entering a courtroom. He looked at his crew. Louisa gave a small nod. Ryan was already typing, trying to build a better translator. Priya stood straight, calm, ready. Understood, Daniel said into the comm. We are listening. And so, in the cold space between Jupiter and Saturn, humanity's first real contact with the wider galaxy began. Not with war, not with fanfare, but with a quiet question. A black ship, and 4 humans who had no idea they were about to change everything. Part 2. The black ship hung in space like a shadow given form. It did not move. It did not speak again. But the signal it sent continued to flow, steady and clear, now layered with new patterns that Ryan worked to untangle. His fingers flew across the console, eyes locked on shifting symbols that danced like fireflies in the dim light of the bridge. Louisa watched the alien vessel's energy readings, which remained flat. No spikes, no surges, nothing that suggested hidden weapons or sudden movement. Priya stood near the medical bay door, arms folded, her gaze fixed on the viewport as if she could will understanding from the void. Daniel kept his voice low and even. Can you tell what they want? Ryan shook his head slightly. Not yet, but it's not a threat. The structure is procedural, like a legal notice, or an announcement. Louisa frowned. An announcement? Out here? Maybe they're broadcasting to more than just us, Ryan said. But they locked onto our signal first. That means they chose to talk to us. Daniel thought fast. Earth Command hadn't responded to their burst transmission yet. Too far, too slow. They were on their own. He made a decision. Open a standard first contact protocol. Use the old UN handshake sequence, the one with the hydrogen line and the Fibonacci pulse. Louisa raised an eyebrow. That's from the 2040s. It's practically ancient. It's simple, Daniel said. And simple is universal. She nodded and tapped in the sequence. A soft series of tones pulsed from the Aurora's Edge, mimicking the natural rhythm of hydrogen atoms and the spiral of a seashell. It was humanity's oldest attempt to say, we are here and we are thinking. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the black ship glowed again, this time along its entire length, a slow ripple of silver light that moved from bow to stern like a breath. The signal changed once more. Now it carried words, not in English, but in a form Ryan's system could almost read. They're saying, acknowledged, prepare for directive. Directive? Priya asked. Like an order? Sounds like it, Ryan said, his voice tight. Daniel didn't like the word. Orders meant someone thought they had the right to give them. He keyed the comm again. We do not accept directives from unknown sources. Identify yourselves. Silence stretched. Then, a new voice came through. Not mechanical, not synthesized, but smooth and calm, speaking in slightly accented but clear English. We are the Wardens of Equilibrium. We serve the Galactic Conquered. You are humanity. You have been observed. A decision has been made. Daniel's stomach dropped. Observed? For how long? By whom? What decision? He asked. The Conquered has voted to place your species under controlled stewardship. Your expansion will be limited. Your technology will be reviewed. Your autonomy will be guided for the stability of the galactic community. Louisa let out a quiet curse. Priya's eyes narrowed. Ryan stared at the screen as if it might bite him. Daniel kept his voice steady. You voted without us present, without our input. That's not how we handle things on Earth. The Warden's voice did not change. Your species is young, emotional, unpredictable. You have not yet earned a seat at the table of galactic governance. We've earned the right to speak for ourselves, Daniel said. A pause, then. Very well, you may relay this message to your world. Compliance is expected within one standard cycle. The signal began to fade. No, Daniel said quickly. Wait. The glow on the alien ship paused. You came all this way, he continued. You could have just sent a message. But you showed up. That means you care what we do. So let us show you who we really are, not just your reports or your data. Silence again, longer this time. Then the Warden spoke, slower now. Explain. Louisa leaned forward. Tell them about the Mars Water Treaty or the Pacific Reclamation Project. Ryan added, or how we shared the fusion breakthrough with every nation, even the ones we didn't like. Priya said softly, or how, after the Jakarta quake, people from 10 countries showed up with food and med kits before their own governments could react. Daniel took a breath. We're not perfect. We fight. We make mistakes. But when it matters, we choose to help. Even when it costs us, that's not in your data, is it? Another long pause. The black ship seemed to hum, though no sound reached them through the vacuum. Then the Warden said, Curious, that was all. But it was enough. Suddenly, alarms blared, not from the alien ship, but from Earth. A Priority 1 emergency burst lit up their comms panel. Louisa pulled it up. It was global. Every major network, every government channel, every civilian satellite, all broadcasting the same thing. The black ship near Jupiter had been detected. Panic was spreading. Some called it an invasion. Others called it salvation. Conspiracy theories bloomed like wildfire. But one thing was clear. Earth knew, and Earth was reacting. Within hours, something unexpected happened. Instead of chaos, coordination began to rise. The United States Space Command opened a direct line to the European Deep Space Network. India's orbital defense grid shared sensor data with Brazil. Even nations that hadn't spoken in years exchanged messages, not about blame, but about response. Social media flooded with translations of the Warden's message. Citizen scientists posted analyses. Artists made songs about the black ship. Children drew pictures of humans shaking hands with stars. The Wardens watched it all. Their sensors, far more advanced than anything on Earth, picked up the surge in global communication. Not just official channels, but billions of personal messages, all saying the same thing in different ways. We speak for ourselves. Back on the Aurora's edge, Priya had an idea. They think we're chaotic, but what if we show them our chaos has a heart? What do you mean? Daniel asked. Invite them down, she said. Not to a military base, not to a government building. To a place where real people live. Let them see a school, a hospital, a farm. Let them meet teachers, doctors, kids. Ryan's eyes lit up. Geneva, the old UN building. It's neutral ground, and it's still standing. Louisa nodded. If they agree to come, We can guide them in. No weapons, no tricks, just openness. Daniel looked at the black ship. They came to control us, but maybe they don't understand what we are. He opened the channel again. Wardens of Equilibrium, we invite you to Earth, not as judges, not as rulers, as guests. See us with your own eyes, then decide. The silence this time felt different, less cold, more thoughtful. Then the warden replied, "Such an offer is irregular." "But not forbidden?" Daniel asked. "No," the warden said. "It is not forbidden." A small opening. That was all they needed. Over the next few hours, plans formed quickly. Earth's Provisional Council, made up of leaders from every continent, agreed to host the wardens in Geneva. No armies, no speeches. Just a simple meeting. Scientists, teachers, farmers, and students would be there. No filters, no scripts. Meanwhile, the Aurora's edge stayed in position, a quiet bridge between two worlds. Louisa worked with Earth engineers to design a safe approach path for the alien ship. Ryan built a real-time translation matrix so the wardens could understand human speech in all its messy, emotional glory. Priya prepared medical protocols, not for disease, but for cultural shock. She knew meeting an alien mind could be as jarring as any injury. Daniel stood alone in the observation bay again, watching Jupiter's storm swirl below. He thought about his grandmother, who had lived through the last great war on Earth. She used to say, "People are scared of what they don't understand, but understanding starts with showing up." Now humanity was showing up, not with guns, not with demands, just with open hands and open hearts. The black ship began to move. Slowly, gracefully, it turned toward the inner solar system, toward Earth, toward Geneva. Daniel didn't know what would happen next. But for the first time he felt hope, not because they were strong, but because they were willing to be seen. And sometimes, that was enough. Part 3. The black ship entered Earth's atmosphere not with fire or noise, but with a silence so deep it seemed to swallow sound itself. It glided over the Alps like a thought, smooth and weightless, and settled gently in the open field beside the old United Nations building in Geneva. No landing gear, no exhaust, just a soft ripple in the air, and then it was there, resting on the grass as if it had always belonged. Crowds had gathered, not in fear, but in quiet awe. People stood behind temporary barriers, holding signs that read "Welcome" in dozens of languages. Children waved small flags. A group of musicians played a simple tune on flutes and drums, something old, something human. There were no soldiers in sight, no guns. Just ordinary people watching, waiting, hoping. Inside the UN chamber, the air was still. The room had been cleared of all but a few chairs arranged in a loose circle. No podiums, no flags. Just space for voices to meet. Daniel, Louisa, Ryan, and Priya sat on one side. Across from them sat 3 wardens. They were tall, slender beings with smooth gray skin that shimmered faintly in the light. Their eyes were large and black without pupils, and they moved with a grace that made every gesture feel deliberate. They did not wear armor or uniforms, just simple robes of deep blue that seemed to absorb the light around them. The lead warden, who called itself Kale 7, spoke first. Its voice was calm, but there was something new in it. Curiosity, perhaps. "You invited us," it said. "Now show us." Daniel nodded. He had no grand speech prepared, no rehearsed arguments, just truth. He turned to the door. It opened. In walked a woman in her 60s, her hands rough from years of work. She wore a faded green apron and carried a basket of vegetables. Her name was Elena Martinez, and she ran a community farm outside Madrid. She had lost her home in the coastal floods of 2058. But instead of leaving, she stayed and helped rebuild. Now her farm fed over 200 families. She set the basket down in the center of the circle. "This is what we grow," she said in Spanish. Ryan's translator rendered it softly into the warden's harmonic language. "We share it. Not because we have to, because it feels wrong not to." Kale 7 tilted its head. "You give food without payment?" "Sometimes," Elena said. "Sometimes we trade. Sometimes we just give. Hunger doesn't ask for money." Next came a young man named Kwame Ose, a teacher from Accra. He carried a small tablet showing drawings made by his students, children who had lived through power shortages, water rationing, and the loss of parents to old diseases. Yet their drawings showed stars, rockets, and smiling aliens. "We teach them to dream," Kwame said, "even when the lights go out." Then came Dr. Lena Petrov, a former soldier who had fought in the Siberian border conflicts. She now ran a clinic that treated anyone who walked through the door: refugees, former enemies, even AI constructs seeking care. She spoke without pride. "I used to carry a rifle," she said. "Now I carry bandages. It's harder work, but it heals more than just bodies." One by one, more people came. A fisherman from the Philippines who cleaned ocean plastic in his spare time. A programmer from Toronto who built free learning apps for kids in war zones. A grandmother from Cairo who opened her home to strangers during heat waves. The wardens listened. They did not interrupt. They did not take notes. But their stillness felt different now, less judgmental, more attentive. Kale 7 finally spoke. "Your data stream showed conflict, scarcity, division, but this was not in the reports. Because reports miss the quiet things," Daniel said. "The things that don't make headlines. The things that happen when no one is watching," Louisa added. "You saw our wars. But you didn't see us laying down our weapons to dig wells together." Ryan leaned forward. "You measured our output, how much energy we use, how many ships we build, but not our input. How much we care." Priya looked at Kale 7. "You think control brings peace, but peace isn't something you give people. It's something they build every day with each other." Outside, the sun moved across the sky. The crowd remained. No one shouted. No one pushed. They just waited, as if holding their breath. Back in orbit, the Concord watched through the warden's feed. Their predictive models had failed. They had expected panic, demands, or defiance. Instead, they saw humility, connection, a species that knew its flaws but chose kindness anyway. On Earth, news channels broadcast the meeting live. Not with commentary, but with silence, letting people hear the voices for themselves. In homes from Oslo to Jakarta, families watched a farmer offer a warden a tomato. They saw a child hand a drawing to one of the tall beings who accepted it with both hands as if it were sacred. In that moment, something shifted, not just in Geneva, but across the planet. Old grudges felt smaller. Borders seemed less important. People began talking to neighbors they'd ignored for years. A factory in Detroit started making water purifiers to send to drought zones. A school in Seoul opened its virtual classrooms to students in Lagos. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't magic. But it was real. Kale 7 stood slowly. The other wardens rose with it. "You have shown us something we did not understand," it said. "Your species is not stable. But you are not chaotic either. You are adaptive. You bend, but you do not break." Daniel stood too. "We're not asking to be perfect, just to be free to try." Kale 7 looked at the basket of vegetables, then at the drawings, then at the faces around the room. "We will return to the Concorde," it said. "We will tell them what we have seen." It turned to leave, then paused. "One question," it said. "Why did you not fight us?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Because fighting solves the wrong problem. You weren't our enemy. You were just wrong about us." The wardens walked out into the sunlight. The crowd parted silently. No one reached out. No one shouted. They just watched as the tall beings stepped onto the grass and looked up at their ship. Before boarding, Kale 7 turned back once. "You are not ready for the galaxy," it said. Then, after a pause, it added, "But perhaps the galaxy is not ready for you." With that, the black ship rose into the sky, smooth and silent, and vanished into the clouds. In the chamber, no one cheered. No one celebrated. They just sat for a long time, feeling the weight of what had happened. Daniel looked at his crew. Louisa was wiping her eyes. Ryan was holding one of the children's drawings. Priya stood by the window, watching the empty field. They had not won a war. They had not signed a treaty. But they had done something harder. They had been seen, and for the first time, the galaxy might start to understand that humanity's greatest strength was not in its ships or its science, but in its stubborn, messy, beautiful choice to care, even when it made no sense. Part 4. The black ship returned to the Concorde chamber near the dying star Xylos, not with the quiet certainty of enforcers, but with something new: doubt. Kale 7 and the other wardens stood before the 17 species once more. But this time they did not deliver a decree. They delivered a question. "What is peace?" Kale 7 asked, its voice softer than before. The chamber rippled with low hums and shifting colors. The question was not in their protocols. Peace to the conquered was the absence of conflict. It was balance, predictability, order maintained through control. But what the wardens had seen on Earth did not fit that definition. There had been no order, only people choosing again and again to help each other despite the mess. One of the oldest members, a being of woven light named Virel, spoke. "Peace is stability. Stability requires limits. Humanity has shown it cannot govern itself without risk to the whole." Kale 7 did not argue. Instead, it played a recording. The chamber filled with the voice of Elena Martinez offering a tomato, with Kwame's students laughing over a shared tablet, with Dr. Petrov saying, "It's harder work, but it heals more than just bodies." The Concord members watched as a child handed a drawing of a smiling alien to a warden. They heard Daniel say, "You weren't our enemy. You were just wrong about us." Silence followed, not the silence of judgment, but of confusion. Their models had no category for this kind of behavior. Altruism existed in other species, yes, but never so freely, so widely, so without expectation of return. Then from the far side of the circle, a young representative from the insectoid Zenth spoke, a rare event as the Zenth rarely intervened. "Their chaos has a pattern," it said in clicking tones. "They do not seek to dominate. They seek to connect." Varel pulsed with irritation. "Connection leads to entanglement. Entanglement leads to shared collapse. One unstable species can drag down many. But what if their instability is not weakness?" Kale 7 asked. "What if it is resilience?" The word hung in the air like a spark. Back on Earth, life did not stop. The meeting in Geneva had not solved hunger or healed every wound, but it had changed something deeper. People began to look at each other differently. A factory owner in Chicago called his workers not just employees, but partners. A village in Nepal shared its last generator with a neighboring town during a blackout. In schools, children were asked not just what they wanted to be, but how they wanted to help. Daniel and his crew returned to the Aurora's edge, not as heroes, but as witnesses. They were debriefed by Earth's Provisional Council, but they refused medals or titles. "We just showed up," Daniel said. "That's all anyone needs to do." Louisa worked with engineers worldwide to build open-source designs for clean water systems, sharing them freely online. Ryan started a project to record every human language still spoken, not for data but for memory. Priya trained medics in remote areas using virtual links, her calm voice guiding hands she would never touch. And all the while, they waited. The Concorde had not given an answer. No new ships came. No messages arrived. But Earth felt watched, not with suspicion, but with something like wonder. Then, one morning, a new signal appeared. Not from the wardens. Not from the Concord. From a dozen different sources across the galaxy. Small transmissions, faint but clear. Some were questions. "How do you share food?" asked one. "Why do you teach children to dream?" asked another. A few were stories. Tales from other worlds where beings had once been told they were too wild, too emotional, too broken to join the greater community. Ryan realized what was happening. "They're talking to us," he said, eyes wide. "Not as subjects. As equals," Louisa smiled. "Looks like we started a conversation." Daniel stood at the viewport watching Earth turn below. "We didn't change the galaxy," he said. "We just reminded it that peace isn't silence. It's voices choosing to listen." Weeks passed. The Conquered remained quiet, but the smaller species, the ones who had long lived under its rules, began reaching out. A trader from the Rim world sent a gift, seeds that could grow in poison soil. A scholar from the Glass Moons shared ancient texts on healing through sound. None of it was grand. None of it was official, but it was real. Then came the day the Concorde finally spoke again, a single message broadcast on all human channels, simple and direct. "The original decree is rescinded." That was all. No explanation, no ceremony. But everyone understood. In Geneva, people gathered again, not in fear but in quiet joy. They did not cheer. They held hands. They shared bread. They looked up at the sky and knew they were no longer alone and no longer judged. On the Aurora's edge, the crew listened to the message in silence. Priya was the first to speak. "What now?" Daniel turned from the viewport. "Now we keep showing up," Louisa nodded. And keep sharing, Ryan added, and keep listening. They knew the road ahead would not be easy. Trust had to be earned every day. Mistakes would happen. Fears would return. But something had changed, not just in how the galaxy saw humanity, but in how humanity saw itself. They were not perfect. They never would be. But they were enough, and sometimes enough was everything. High above, near the old star Xylos, the conquered chamber remained still. But in the quiet, a new motion began. One by one, the 17 species turned not toward their data streams, but toward each other. They spoke not of control, but of curiosity, of connection, of what might grow if they stopped fearing chaos and started learning from it. Kale 7 watched from the edge of the circle, silent. In its hand, it still held the child's drawing, a crude sketch of a human and a warden, standing side by side under a sun with too many rays. It did not throw it away. It kept it close, because sometimes the smallest things carried the biggest truths. Part 5. The galaxy did not change overnight. Stars still burned the same, planets still turned. But something quiet had shifted in the space between worlds. The conquered, for the first time in centuries, opened its doors. Not all the way, but enough. Humanity would not be controlled. Instead, it would be invited. Not as a full member, not yet, but as a provisional voice in the great circle of species. For 100 cycles, about a century in human years, they would walk beside the older civilizations, learning and being learned from, proving not that they were perfect, but that they were willing. On Earth, the news spread like morning light. No sirens, no grand announcements. Just a simple message shared from phone to phone, screen to screen, person to person. We're in. People did not riot or celebrate with fireworks. They gathered in parks, in kitchens, in classrooms, and simply talked. They spoke about what it meant to be part of something larger, not as servants or subjects, but as neighbors. Daniel Brooks stood on the observation deck of the Aurora's Edge, now docked at the new orbital station above Geneva, the first joint human-Concord outpost. It was small, built with human steel and warden-grown crystal, a place where both sides could meet without fear. He watched Earth below, blue and green and alive, and thought of how far they had come from the days when nations fought over lines on a map. Louisa joined him, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "They're sending the first exchange team next week," she said. 3 wardens. They want to learn about repair work. Said they've never seen someone fix a broken thing with duct tape and hope. Daniel smiled. "Tell them to bring extra tape." Ryan floated in behind them, his arms full of data pads. The Zenth just sent a request. They want to study how human children learn through play. They think it might help their young ones be less rigid. Priya appeared last, her medical bag slung over her shoulder. She had just finished training a group of warden healers in trauma care, not with machines but with presence. "They kept asking why we hold hands with the dying," she said softly. "I told them it's so they don't feel alone. They didn't understand at first, but I think they're starting to." Life went on, but it was different now. Human ships still flew, but some carried not just cargo, but teachers, artists, gardeners. Alien vessels, once feared, now docked at Earth ports. Their crews stepping out not with weapons, but with gifts. Seeds from desert worlds, songs from ocean moons, stories written in light. In Nairobi, a young girl named Amina built a solar charger, using plans shared by a reptilian engineer from the Theta Belt. In Oslo, an old man taught wardens how to bake bread, laughing as they tried to understand why humans needed dough, like it owed them money. In the Amazon, elders shared knowledge of plant medicine with scholars from 6 different species, all sitting on the ground listening like students. The conquered watched, not with suspicion but with growing respect. They saw that humanity's so-called chaos was not random, it was creative. Where others saw risk, humans saw chance. Where others built walls, humans built bridges even if they wobbled at first. Kale 7 returned to Earth often. It no longer wore the robes of a warden, but simple clothes like the humans. Jeans, a shirt, boots that scuffed on the pavement. It walked through markets, sat in cafes, and once spent an entire afternoon watching children play soccer in a dusty field in Mexico. When asked why, it said, "I am learning how joy moves." Daniel met Kale 7 one evening on the orbital station's outer walkway. The stars were bright and Earth glowed below like a promise. "You came to control us," Daniel said. "And you handed us the key," Kale 7 replied. echoing words spoken long ago. They stood in silence for a while. "Do you think we'll last the 100 cycles?" Daniel asked. Kale 7 turned its dark eyes toward him. "You already have. Control was never the answer. Connection is." Back on Earth, a new school opened in a small town in Oregon. It had no walls between classrooms. Students learned math from human teachers and star navigation from wardens. They studied Earth history and galactic myths side by side. At lunch, they shared food from a dozen worlds, trading flavors like secrets. One day, a boy asked his teacher, "Are we still the weird ones?" The teacher, a woman who had once marched for clean water in Mumbai, smiled. "We're not weird. We're just new. And new things scare people, until they don't." High above, the Aurora's edge prepared for its next mission. Not to scout or defend, but to deliver. It carried seeds, books, medicine, and messages of friendship to a colony on Mars, where humans and a small group of Zenth were building greenhouses together. As the ship lifted off, Daniel looked out at the stars, not as distant points of light, but as homes. He thought of all the beings out there, each with their own fears, hopes, and quiet acts of kindness. He thought of the farmer, the teacher, the doctor, the child with a drawing. They had not won a war. They had not conquered space. They had simply chosen every day to be kind even when it was hard, to listen even when they were afraid, to show up even when no one asked them to, and that, more than any weapon or treaty, had changed everything. The galaxy was vast, and peace was not a place you reached. It was a path you walked, together, and humanity, messy and loud and full of heart, had finally found its step.